And I love the fact that you already have a Howard University t-shirt on. So, we're good. All right. So why are we here? We have to get right into it. I did not write any introductory remarks for Ta-Nehisi Coates. And I don't think he needs any. I think he's a man who, at this point, needs no introduction. But I'll say, saying that is interesting to me because I've known him most of my life, in fact. And I met him right here as a 19-year-old. And the fact that you all would show up to hear what he has to say is still baffling to me. The fact that people line up down the block to shake his hand is amazing to me. But the fact of the matter is, the man is prolific, he's brilliant in his writing, he's won so many of the major awards, including National Book Award. He is not just in the genre of the novel, The Water Dancer, but also he's a critic. He's also telling stories through memoir. He's also writing long-form essays in The Case for Reparations and The Black Family at the Age of Mass Incarceration. He's also doing graphic novels. He's also writing films. He's finishing up Superman right now. So, and I'm leaving things out. He's also a blogger. I said I wasn't going to introduce him because he needs no introduction. I just introduced him. But my man, Ta-Nehisi Coates. All right, well, you can tell I'm excited. And Ta-Nehisi and I have done this before, just by way of background. We know each other. I'm beginning this conversation with a great deal of bias. I'm Team Ta-Nehisi Coates. I think outside of his family, I'm probably his biggest fan, although I could say we probably are more family than we are friends right now. So this conversation is a very biased one. I'm speaking as someone who really admires you, but I'm also a critic of yours. I could come at it a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So just to get into it, how are you feeling?
Oh, I feel great. I'll be quite honest with you. The commute, that I'm still living in New York, is not fun, and Jesus, is so stupid. I took a 6 o'clock flight here this morning, so I've been up since I only got 2 hours of sleep, so I've been up a long time, and I have these moments where I'm like cursing myself for doing this, and then I get here, and I'm like, I don't want to go back. You know what I'm saying? It's more beautiful than I imagined. I had forgotten, and I wrote about it. Obviously, I've written about it before. I tell other people, about how beautiful a place this is, but I had forgotten. You know what I'm saying? Like it's one thing to have the memory of something, but when you're actively experiencing it, it's a very different.
Just describe it, because I came in January. And I was watching you 2 weeks ago go through what I went through in January.
Yeah.
And you're saying, oh, I see, and Aronde Miller's right there in the back.
Yeah.
He was our friend. I remember Aronde walking over here to the School of Education. And you're experiencing now through the 1990s.
Right.
But then very quickly, it becomes the now, because this group, the energy is different. But so, how have you been experiencing some of like being present, or are you still?
No.
Nostalgia?
It's like it's funny. When I was a student here, I would have what I can only describe as like ancestral memory. Like I was very much, even at that time, interested in being a writer, and so you walk across the yard and think, wow, Toni Morrison, walked across here, and like that's still there. Lucille Clifton was here, or Zora Hurston, or Barack, or whoever. Like that's still there. But then it's like on top of that, they're like, there's the layer of, like your memory of being here and your memory of them. You know what I mean? And then on top of that, you're watching, I'm trying to get out of the habit of saying the kids. You're watching the students, I'm sorry guys, it's very condescending, you're adults. The students who are brilliant. I mean, just absolutely as brilliant as I remember. Yeah, more in fact.
I think they're more.
Yeah, more, especially now. Yeah, more. I, at this point, have taught at MIT. I've taught at NYU. I shouldn't have to say this, but there really has been absolutely no drop-off. Just in terms of the quality. The caliber of the student that you're dealing with here at Howard. The other thing is, I think, and this is something I could not have known before, but we were just talking about this. But now having traveled, a little bit, and having interacted with other diasporic communities in a way that I had not, when I came here in 1993, mentally preparing myself to go to Senegal for the first time next week. I am very much aware of sitting here and having a group of Black Colombians walk in, and what that means. That's not something that everybody gets to experience. And when we were here, it was these sorts of diasporic exchanges were just so normal that I would say I almost took them for granted. It happened so much. You know?
I felt that way when I was leaving, and I was headed to the University of Chicago. And I'm just at school walking across the yard, and the Chicago starts later, and I just stopped. I don't think I'm ever gonna have this again.
Yeah.
I think this moment, I had to try to force myself to be in that moment. Because one Friday, my senior year, I walked out of fine arts, they were having protests on the steps, they were playing the piano because they were complaining about the quality of the instruments. And the Kappas were, the Qs were stepping on the other side of the campus. Some people were doing capoeira on one part of the campus. Kids were freestyling in front of Blackburn, and people had picnic tables. A picnic blankets. I said, this is the blackest thing ever. But at the same time, what you're saying about diaspora, it's so very, very Black. Just now at 6 o'clock, they play the alma mater and the Black National Anthem at Howard University. It does not get more beautiful and Black than that. But then at the same time, the Blackness matters less in some ways. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
We have Black Colombians here, we have Ghanaians and Nigeria. So the Blackness, let's get Blackness off the table. We're all Black, and we're all smart. But at the same time, it is so very, very Black. You know what I'm saying?
Well, because the thing is, there's a difference between being a student here and being immersed in it, and that's your world. But I leave. You leave. You go back into the regular world every day. For days, on end, and it's not that. And so it is. It's immediately striking. First day I walked, I was like, man, that's a lot of Black people. I live in New York. It's not like I don't see Black people, but it's a lot. It ain't no white people. Damn. You see a few, but not. You know what I mean?
But at the same time, what's also striking is that when you're on campus, you have, on any given day, 6,000 Black people under the age of 23. And they're doing everything that goes against the stereotype of who they are in society. And not a single police officer around.
That's right.
So it's like the antithesis of American Blackness is Howard and Morehouse and Spelman and all the other HBCUs. We're here and we're doing the things that they say that does not define us. But it does define us here.
And I think that's what's so necessary about it. You know what I mean? I didn't think at 46 I would need that. I understood how a kid at 18 would need that. But again, it is very, very hard, even as you tell yourself, the racism and the lie which is all around you, which is the ocean that all of us swim in. You can tell yourself, this ocean isn't real, this ocean isn't real, this ocean, but you're still in it. You know what I mean? And it still has effects. And so, to come somewhere where that's not the case, is just, it is essential. It gives me life. I have this joke, I wonder at this point, because the interactions with your students are very, very, very different. And I'm sorry NYU and I'm sorry MIT, but they are, and so that was another thing I wasn't really prepared for. There are things I would say to them that I just wouldn't say at another university. Nothing bad, or maybe sometimes something bad, but
you're freer.
Yeah, but also it's I've been teaching writing for 10 years now. And so there's a way where I can just teach you, okay, here you technique this do that, you shouldn't do that, blah, 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 blah. But when I teach it here, it is, writing is a skill and it's a thing, reading and writing, that is deeply connected to the liberation of Black people. That when you read Frederick Douglass's memoir, and he says, he's talking about what is the thing they were most afraid of me doing. You know what I mean? It wasn't, the scene that people always talk about where, he ends up fighting the slave breaker. It was the reading. It was the reading. And so there's this deep, ancient tradition of our liberation being connected to the art of reading and writing. And so I always tell my students, from jump, you know what I mean? When I had them in the summer and when I told them, from here, we are learning technique to do something. You know what I mean? Like, it is in the service of something. It's not, I make words pretty. You know? I mean, I like pretty words too, but here it is a very, very, like, you're supposed to learn it and then go do something with it. You know what I mean? Which I guess I would hope all my kids would do, but...
So I've heard people ask this question many times, but I'm going to ask it again because I think you answer it differently different times. So with that in mind, when you're sitting down and writing, who are you writing for?
Well, first of all, for myself. That's the first thing. I'm usually, a lot of times I'm thinking about myself at about 14, 15, 16.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? The things I wanted to read, So there is a black boy somewhere in the world, I imagine a black boy somewhere in the world that was kind of like me, who's reading the work.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is who I'm picturing. And I think, like, to the extent that there's an approach beyond that, I'm always trying to clarify. You know what I mean? Like, is this, Ben won't tell you this, but or maybe he will. But we used to have this little, study collective. We would argue and debate and fight and critique and all of that.
At 8 o'clock in the morning.
At 8 o'clock on a Saturday.
At Wilson's Diner. What were we thinking? That was ridiculous.
Had no lives.
We were just young and tenacious.
Yeah.
So.
But it was so much, rigor. And then there was rigor, like, we both came out of the history department. There was so much rigor, in the history department on top of that. And so, like, weirdly enough, when I write, I try to write with that same rigor, which is to say, how do I make this as clear as I possibly can? Even if it's fictional, like, how do I make this so that you see it, so that you feel it, so that, you can follow everything. That's the main thing I'm thinking of. And I think because, and I have no problem saying this, I've been lucky enough to have, a larger readership than I ever thought I would, and that necessarily means, white readers. People think sometimes that must mean that what you're doing is saying, I'm writing for them.
Yeah. Well, let me back up then and tap into this point that you made earlier about us being here and the other folks in the room who are here with us. And I don't want to. We can talk about why we valorized the '90s in that way. If that was a very different Howard experience. I think some of that has to do with you and writing a book about Howard University in the '90s and then producing a movie about Howard University in the '90s. Might have something to do. Well, we can talk about it.
Right.
But we would walk around. We felt so proud and privileged to be here because we were walking out of a lane lock hall. We used to teach here. Walking into Frederick Douglass Hall, who was a trustee here, and then we're reading their works, The New Negro and The Narrative, and then all the people that you named. But we didn't interact with them. But then here's Ta-Nehisi Coates, who is writing books that they're reading, but then here you are. Do you think about that?
No, because I hope you guys can really, really hear when I say this. And I'm telling you, this is not humility. The pleasure is all mine. The pleasure is all mine. How do I explain this? Well, it kind of connects to what I was saying before. I have a readership that I never thought I would have. And an amount of readership that I never thought I would have. I'm very thankful for that readership. I love all of my readers. I want them to continue to be readers. I never want to tell anybody not to read what I'm writing. But sitting here with you guys in this room, this has not been a common experience for me. It used to be. It used to be really, really common. It used to be normal. It used to be, what it was. But to sit and talk to people who on some intrinsic level know exactly where you're coming from.
But you don't. But you don't think that they're getting something through me that I could not get. Now let's pull it back up. We would be at these events, and we'd always say, an event like this, right? Ta-Nehisi and I'll be sitting there, and somebody's from.
Why are you not teaching at Howard?
Why are you not teaching at Howard? While you're in that white school, you really cared about liberation, you'd be at HBCU, right?
Cornell West. Why are you not teaching at Howard?
You and I have taught at PWIs, right? Well, Temple University, I put that in a special category because it's diversity university. But we were at PWIs. But then here you are. Right. Here I am as well, by the way. But here you are.
Yeah.
And if it were me, I would be blown away by the fact that people are reading my stuff and they have my flag up on Georgia Avenue and they're calling me the greatest writer of my generation, and I'm back at Howard University.
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't think because you'd be an asshole then. You wouldn't be a good person.
Narcissist.
Yeah, you not, like, you can't, like that might occur to you.
But I don't really mean it in a negative way.
You would have to leave it. You would have to let it go.
I don't mean it in a negative way. I don't mean it in a negative way. It could be, yeah, some assholishness about it, but also it is. We felt like it was such a privilege just to be here and to read this stuff with other black people. We weren't really reading people who were here outside of Joseph Harris and history textbooks. Not the same way.
Right. I mean, Ron Walters was here.
Ron Walters was here.
I think.
This is the humility. People.
No, it's not.
No, it is humility. People
not.
think Ta-Nehisi Coates is this guy. He's the most humble guy.
It is not. I'm telling you.
He's frustratingly humble. I gotta tell you.
Okay, so let me back this up. The other thing is a huge part of my training is journalism, right? And so in the craft of journalism, you spend a lot of time asking people questions, and you spend a lot of time actually getting information from other people. And that is my practice of learning. And so, I mean, I'll give you an example. I teach an essay class. I had 11 or 12 kids in my class, students in my class, sorry. Yeah. I'm gonna get that out of my head. 11 or 12 brothers and sisters in my class. And they have to, write an essay, and it's only one essay for the whole class, but, we go through every step, and it's quite rigorous. And they had to do something that was very, very fearful today, which is they had to present the topic which they thought that they might want to write about. And these essays, when they're good, tend to come from somewhere deep and personal. So oftentimes it's something that you're hurting. And so I said, okay, all right, here's what we're going to do. I got this essay I have to write for this book, for this contract I signed a long time ago. The book should have been out by now, but I have this essay I got to write for the book. Okay? I'm going to write the essay with y'all. I'm gonna subject myself to what you guys are going through. And so I said, I'll do my pitch first. I did my pitch last week, right? And I went through it. It's about, I've actually never traveled to Africa, but I'm going to go for the first time next week. And I've been having all sorts of feelings, and me and Ben have been talking about it, and emotions about it, and what it means, and why did it take this long, and what's going on, and blah, blah, blah. And so I talked them through that. And I obviously had some angst and some anxiety, because one of the students looked at me and she said, "Are you afraid?" And I said, "Yes, I am. I am. I'm very, very much afraid." And we got to talk about that a little bit and go through that. I wouldn't have done that at NYU. I wouldn't have done that. And that's no disrespect to NYU or MIT, but I just wouldn't have. I just wouldn't have. You know what I mean? Because there's at least a square one space for me to express my vulnerability. You know what I mean? As I ask them to be, vulnerable in the same way. I did not have that in my life. You understand what I'm saying? I didn't have that. I didn't have 10, 12 young black writers in training. You know what I mean? Who I could have that, who have, some sense of what you're trying to do, what's supposed to be happening, and where you're I don't remember the last time, honestly, I was in any sort of workshop context before this summer.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you to talk about that, because we were talking about you starting this semester, but in fact you started this summer, even before I think it was unethical. I don't think he had a contract yet. He was teaching about it. But he had okay, all right, so
talking about school.
So talk about this, in that same vein, talk about the summer program.
Oh, it was great. We went down to Airlie, which is a retreat in Virginia with a long history of working with LDF and various other civil rights organizations. And we had 10 students, all of them applied. I think we had a pool of somewhere around 70, who applied. We accepted 10, myself and Professor Eve Ewing, who's a brilliant poet, sociologist / comic book writer / young adult writer, just a brilliant all-around writer herself. And we were down there for 2 weeks. And first day I was like, wow, this is really, really, really different. Like, I've been in workshop situations before. But I've never been in a situation where I have 10, and it's getting repetitive, 10 young black writers in training. I don't remember the last time I was in a room talking about work with 10 black writers, period.
Or them.
Period. You know what I mean? Or them.
The
right.
ways in which they're engaging each other.
Right.
In that small, maybe large classes, but 10 people as an undergraduate is very rare.
It's a privilege. We call our mutual friend Jackie Woodson, the great novelist, came down to do a workshop with us. She didn't want to leave.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Here's a woman that's won National Book Award, MacArthur Genius. I mean, she got all of the things, all the accolades, all the medals.
I've never seen anything like this.
And I get it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I get it. So you guys have to understand that, like, it really is a pleasure. The pleasure really, really, really is mine. Without these kinds of interactions, if you call yourself a black writer and you don't have a base in black people, if I don't have a base in black people, it can be hard sometimes. Yeah. I will say that.
You're amusing. So, along those lines, what were you, just to that point, just to finish up that thread, one thing that we talked about is just Ta-Nehisi's at a point in his career where he can go anywhere in the world and teach. Any university would have him. I'm not quite there, but I can go places. I was someplace very comfortable, in fact.
Good job, right? Great job. You loved it.
13 years. It became pretty easy.
Yeah, you loved it.
But we both chose to come back here.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that says something, particularly Ta-Nehisi, who could literally probably call up a university president and say, I would like to come to your faculty. I might be exaggerating. Look.
Such an asshole.
You wouldn't do it, but maybe it's hyperbolic, but you have options. You have options. But you chose to come here, and that speaks volumes. That's very important.
Time is short. Time is short. Life is short. You know, things you do should mean something.
So let me circle back. We're talking just about your life and relationship. One thing that Tom did, the first thing, even before he came back to campus, was how can I support Moreland Spingarn?
Mm-hmm.
We had a meeting about it. He said, I want Moreland to be my project. That's what he said. Speak a little bit about. And it's tied to we all have the reasons why we came to Howard. Right? My father insisted my sister, no, you're not going to some crazy private school in New England that she wanted to go to. She said, no, you're going to either Lincoln, Spelman, or Howard. That was it. And so she came in because of her. Many friends, my neighborhood, my high school, B came to Howard. Right? Mm-hmm. You see how that happens? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What's your connection? And so what's your story in that regard? Because Moreland is really at the center of it, right?
Yeah. So my father's here in the back there. You just raise your hand real quick. I want to. And while we always want to acknowledge, certainly our parents, I have to particularly acknowledge my dad because everything I'm about to say. Dad, forgive me a little bit, but I'm gonna try to get the outlines of the story correct. So my dad, always has, been a reader, since he was a kid growing up in Philadelphia. Went into the Black Panther Party, came out of the Black Panther Party, worked as a bookseller, eventually a book publisher, and actually sold books right up here on Howard University. And as I understand it, was set up one day, and there was a groundskeeper here who he would, interact with pretty regularly. And it turns out the dude had a daughter who was at Howard University, and my dad wondered how this man was pulling this off. And he said, well, if you work here, your kid can go here. And at that time, I believe my dad would have had about 5 or 6 by then, I think. So that was a lot of kids who would eventually have to go somewhere. So that was probably the more pragmatic aspect of it, which actually ended up happening, by the way. But there's a bigger part of it, and that is the fact that I was raised in a home with 2 parents who just really, really loved books. And after my dad went back to school at a HBCU, USC Joint Douglas in Baltimore, and then at Atlanta, the University of Atlanta, with a master's in library science, he came to work at Moreland Spingarn, actually. I have been coming to Moreland Spingarn since I probably was about 5 or 6 years old. And so we were talking earlier about memories compounding. And so I would come to work with my dad, at Moreland Spingarn. And I had some, you're a child, so you don't really have a full sense of what this is, but I knew it was something really, really important. You know what I mean? I knew it had something to do with black people and, black books, etc. I came back years later after my dad had left, and I would often, as a history major, I would often study in Moreland Spingarn, and it's actually really tough for me to articulate like what I was thinking and why. I think we thought of it as a very serious holy place. I think that's what we thought, right? Like that. I thought it was magical that you could basically get anything written by any black person. I mean, you gotta remember, there's no internet, okay? It's not, you can't Google, let me do a Google book search. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't exist. You know what I mean? And so, like, the ability to be on the campus and walk into a room and say, I want that book published in, 1960 whenever by Addison Gale. I want to read that. You know what I mean? Or I want, that book, published by, whoever, whatever, Edward Blyden. You know what I mean? 18, whatever. I want to see it. I want to read the actual thing.
Put your hands on it.
And you can put your hands on it. This was like, and I think with both of us as history majors on top of that, I mean, this was like holy. I mean, this was, and it remains holy. I was in there working last week, and there were copies of, Jesus, what is the...
Negro Digest?
No, I was looking for Negro. Is it Opportunity? I think.
Opportunity magazine.
Yeah. Bound copies out there. And I can just like flip through Opportunity, which is like incredible. Like,
while you wait for your
lighting. Yes, exactly. I mean, here you have like a history of early 20th century Black America right there. Right there. I cannot, I was talking before about the base aspect of it. Writers need, like, you got to be rooted in something. You got to be pulling, from something, from somewhere, you know what I mean, to do what you do. Well, I have to. And for certainly the early part of my young career, I had Mona Spring on. And my whole life flowed out of my father's decision to write. I wouldn't know Ben. You know what I mean? Like, the majority of friends I've had for the majority of my life, I would not have. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be, married to the woman I'm married to. My kid would be my kid. I mean, like, everything, you know what I mean, flows, out of that. And so it's a very, very special, what do you call it? You call it Timbuktu?
I have referred to it now. Well, I actually said that Howard University, in terms of from a historian standpoint, is a more profound resource than Timbuktu. We can get into Timbuktu as the...
Why is that?
Because the text in Timbuktu, I don't want to nerd out on you, I'm a historian,
No,
there's a tradition in Timbuktu and other cities along the Niger River in Mali, where families keep books. Books were valued. Books were very, very important resources. A lot of them were family histories, but most of them are religious texts. And they're written in Ajami script. Ajami script is the local language, but written in Arabic. So they're not writing in Arabic, they're writing in Hausa or whatever it is. But if you go there, you're mostly seeing poems and prayers, some histories of family records and things of that nature, but it's not that broad. I'm not saying it's not valuable, it's hugely valuable. Mike Gomez just wrote an amazing book, African Dominion, looking at these texts. But you can't go there and say, I want to see this person in South Africa's story. You're not going to get that in Timbuktu or Jenne or Gao. You're going to get local histories written in the Ajami. You can't go there and say, I'm curious about the Nile and it's the way it flows. You could do that at Howard University, right? And I don't think, and obviously I'm the director, so I'm very proud of it, but there's no other place in the world where you can do that around the Black experience. African, Caribbean, South America, we got histories of Choco. If you want to study Choco, Mona Spingarn is a place you can do that. And I say Mona Spingarn at Howard University more broadly because it's not just what we have there, it's the professors that we have at Howard University. So the resource is rich. So I would argue that we celebrate Timbuktu, we talk about Cairo and ancient Kemet. We can go to Harlem. I'm a Harlemite, I love Harlem, I love the Schomburg. But this is the place. If you really want to immerse yourself in the study of the Black experience, there's no better place, at least to start and to finish. You go other places as well, but this is where you have to be. You have to be there, right? So I'm sorry.
That's why, but that when you were asking why, I mean, you just said it, like that should be known, that should be supported. There's so much wealth here that I think we both would say made us. It should be known and should be supported.
Yeah, the challenge is, as you're saying, like now, if I want to know about Edward Blyden, I don't need to walk across campus to Mona Spingarn. Chances are I'm going to do this.
Yeah, but that's not holding the book.
It's not the holding the book. My concern, though, as someone who's working and thinking about his 20, 25-year future, I'm concerned that there's not this inclination to discover through books in that same. I'm not saying that that people are still buying books.
I'm going to
for
make
sure.
you feel very good about
Okay, good.
2008, when I published my first book, the chatter among the industry was that ebooks, Kindle was just coming out at that point in time. Ebooks will eventually overtake the written actual, like the physical book. And so bookstores were panicked. Everybody was worried. My publisher actually was married to a woman at the time who opened a huge bookstore. Now Jackson's down in Soho. And people were like, why would anybody do that? It's pretty clear people will not want to go to bookstores and will not want to buy physical books.
Oh, they're buying more than that?
It never happened.
Yeah, no, they're buying more than
It never
that.
happened. So there was at least some recognition that the
People are
physical
reading. People are
has
reading.
meaning.
And it has
But
meaning.
we're
I
reading
love
from
it.
the physical. Like
Right.
not just, you know what I'm saying?
But if I have just a question about black leaders in DC in the 1920s, I can Google it.
It's not the same quality.
I agree, but I'm concerned. I'm concerned.
I mean, you can go to your supermarket, you can go to your farmer's
Yeah,
market.
that's right. Right, we're not skinning rabbits anymore. So there's
That's
progress.
right.
We don't want to have too much nostalgia
Right.
about
Right.
the hardships
Right.
of the past.
Right.
A very quick break. I have to turn to our staff member Taylor Enlow to do a time check and to check see what's going on online. Okay. Okay. So let's do that. This is supposed to be a conversation with the Howard University community. We have microphones set up on the sides, I believe. We have a microphone in the
One
back.
on the side over here.
And we have a microphone in the front. I'm happy to jump down and share. If you have some questions, even comments, as you know, usually I have to issue this call several times. I was also warned, and this is a little late, but if you would please silence your phone. I know we're halfway through it. I'm just making that announcement right now. So while they do that, just for my own reflections, I've been fortunate to see your whole career. Ta-Nehisi's first story, his first journalism job was, okay, I'll make this short then, okay.
No, you're fine.
All right, Bison family, I love y'all. Well, we have two minutes.
Okay, no, go.
So when Ta-Nehisi published his first article in the city paper, he was at my apartment, I took the picture, I can't find that picture.
You can't find it?
No, I can't. Yeah, I know. I feel the same way. Yeah, I know. But he's holding up this article that he wrote on Go-Go, right? Oral history of Go-Go.
No, that was later. But the article was there was a different article.
Okay, he was holding up an article, first article published in the Washington City paper. Back in the 90s, Washington City paper was everything. If you wanted to find out where you were going to go that weekend, you had to have the Washington City paper. And Ta-Nehisi published in there, and he had come from the hilltop, so this was like a huge moment. We were so proud.
Yeah.
Probably went out and had drinks that night.
Yeah, probably did.
Yeah.
Jack
And then you go on, hi Jack and Coke. Then you go on, and you're at Philadelphia City Paper. From there, no?
I was no Philadelphia Weekly. which
Philadelphia
doesn't
Weekly.
exist anymore.
And when you guys moved to Delaware, and you were like, I turned the corner. I'm gonna live as a writer, right? Then you go to the Village Voice. Well, you went to New York unemployed.
Unemployed.
Yeah. Got an internship at the Village Voice, and that's all you wanted.
That's all I wanted.
In your mind, this is it. I've turned the corner.
Right.
I'm going to be a successful writer.
Right.
What they said, they didn't see promise in his future. They didn't see.
I didn't have a. I don't. The people are dead now, so I don't know. Literally.
They didn't think Ta-Nehisi had what it takes to be a successful writer, right? God bless him. God bless him. But one night he moves on to Time magazine. I get a call 2 days before Christmas. He's whispering in the phone, Beth, you wouldn't believe this. I'm at the holiday party at Time magazine. At Time magazine. I can't. Your mind was blown by how successful you were, and that was just projecting forward from that moment and looking back. And here you are sitting with us in this space. Now, are you home now? We said, Ta-Nehisi, welcome home. Does this feel like the moment where I'm turning the corner, or are you just so used to having these?
No, you know what's tough about that is almost all those jobs I got fired from.
This is true. I didn't want to say that. I did say the Village Voice, but that was an internship.
But, I mean, so turns out I was wrong in almost all of those cases. So I hope I was not like that.
No, not in that respect. In each of those spaces, you felt like I had arrived, and
Yeah, I was wrong.
this means you were wrong. But now you're home. Now you're right.
I don't want to jinx it. See, let's just say I'm enjoying myself.
There you go.
Enjoying myself.
Well, while you're at home, I love it. Okay, so we have a nice cue on that side. I think there's another mic on this side. You want to say your name and if you're a Howard person, if you have a major or school, or you teaching
Oh.
courses, who are you?
Oh,
Okay, get away from that speaker, please.
thank you. I hope it worked out. Alrighty. Hi. My name is Jamila Best. I am actually a member of the class of 2010, psychology and sociology, double major coming from Brooklyn, New York. And so I'm a project manager now. Came from education, but I'm really excited to be here tonight. Thank you so much, Mr. Coates. Just to sing your accolades for a moment, it was in 2009 in my race and racism class with Dr. Harrell, where he came in with copies of The Beautiful Struggle, and that was our required reading during that point in time. And so your first book, right when it came out, was hot on the press here at Howard University within our classes. And that story that you even spoke of Howard University while I was on the campus and felt became even realer when I was teaching in a space where all of the students looked like me and none of the staff did. And page 32, I believe, of A Beautiful Struggle, Between the World and Me is where you begin to talk about Sonia Sanchez and everyone else just like roaming through campus and the beauty of the Mecca during that point. And I had to share it with, everyone else to just explain what that excitement was. And so in all of those ways, thank you for also keeping me abreast with Black Panther. And I wouldn't know anything about the story. But your writing is so diverse. You've had so many different channels that you've been able to explore. How do you maintain that diversity within the venues that you are traveling through, within the different genres, and your creative freedom within those spaces, while also just continuing to expand? We don't usually see that expansion within those fields, so how are you able to obtain that, and how do you maintain that?
I don't quite know. I try to work really hard at whatever I'm doing. I do know that. I take it seriously. Sometimes I don't have all the time that I wish I had. I think I could have been a much, much stronger comic book writer. And I know some of the things I knew, at the end, at the beginning. I guess I think about it with all this writing. And it's different kinds of writing, obviously, with different kinds of, with different rules. But I just try to go really, really hard. You know what I mean? And I really, really enjoy it. I think that's actually probably key. I think some of the things that maybe other people think of is not particularly enjoyable, but writing I actually really like.
Didn't you say one time that if you went back to write Beautiful Struggle now, Between the World and Me now, it would be a very, very different book.
You told me I couldn't do it.
And that's the goal. As we write, so hopefully we're getting better and better.
Yeah. Or you're just different.
You're just different, times are different, context is different. Thank you.
Hi, how are you? My name is Alexia Pitter. I'm a senior psychology major in African Studies minor. I currently work at FAM, which is Family Against Mandatory Minimums, and we are against mass incarceration. So I kind of had two questions. The first one is, you talk about being in Founders and how it was one of your favorite places to be and how that inspired your history and knowledge. But I guess one can argue you had access, especially in the 90s, to griots that maybe we don't have access to now because of Google. Would you consider yourself a griot? And also, what is your opinion on the griot culture in 2022, and how do you think that's affecting the culture and revolution?
Okay, so you're going to help me out. You're going to define that a little bit. Obviously I know in the West African sense what a griot is, but just define that a bit more for me in terms of how you use it.
So within the Black culture, the idea, the way I see it is this idea that, like you said, you had your dad to pass on these stories, or we used to sit down and talk to our grandmas on the porch, where now I think most of our information comes from Google, and we oftentimes as students find ourselves too busy to have those conversations. So how do you think do you consider yourself a griot in the sense of passing down that history and that knowledge through your writing? And how do you think that idea or that concept has changed with Google, replacing our fathers or grandmothers, etc.?
That's probably not a title I would give.
Talk closer in that mic, please.
Oh, sorry. Is it on? Okay. That's probably not a title I would give to myself. That's just not, it feels a little weird, a little presumptuous in fact, for me to say that. I would challenge you as to whether you're too busy. And I don't even mean you specifically, I mean like in the world, like I would challenge that. I do not think there are any less number of people who are willing to pass down knowledge and information right now than when I was here. I don't think that's actually diminished. I certainly didn't feel that way coming here, you know, when I came back. I actually think there are quite a few people here, you know, who are more than willing. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just going through, I'm thinking in my head, people who helped me out, you know, even when I was coming back, you know what I mean, to you know, help make things happen as they should. So I would disagree with that. Most Swing Art's still right there. You know what I mean? Folks have to make the choice. It's not like in the 90s when we were here, everybody was doing what we were doing. You know, there's always a reason to not do the hard thing. There's always a good reason to not do the hard thing. You know, we ourselves have to make the choice that, you know, as I said, holding that physical book is really, really important. Talking to that actual person is really, really, really important. You can come and interrupt Dr. Talton's day at any point. I'm just gonna put him out there for you.
It happens all day.
Yeah, you can just stumble in, you know what I mean?
It happens all day.
You know, his office is always office hours, so.
Taylor's trying to change that.
But I'm saying that to say that, you know, all kidding aside, Ben is, you know, I think one of the things he prides himself on is certainly, you know, his interactions with students and, you know what I mean, being a resource. And so I don't think, you know, and, you know, I don't think it's like that in us, you know, returning here, you know, we're bringing that back here. I think that's already here, you know, among the faculty.
Can I ask you a follow-up just to get